Well, when I get started, I think, right, if everybody's all right with that, and then people can join us as we come along. So welcome to the AVD discussion series, session 5 now. So we've had some great sessions up to date. Had a really large one last time with Nerdio that was great, but this time we're going to be looking at AppAttach and MSIX, which is a brand new area for app deployment, which we'll take you through. Please note, of course, that this discussion is being recorded, right? We do that for all the sessions so that we can send it out as always afterwards as people that can't make it. So we do like to record them and send it out and save the content for the future. So today, George will be taking you through some of what MSIX is and some of the benefits of using that technology. It is a brand new technology and so has got some limitations. So it's important to understand what we can and can't achieve with AppAttach and MSIX. It's an area that I was most excited about sort of seeing in AVD because I spent 4 years of my life packaging applications way back when I was an engineer, when sort of before MSIs, and then as the MSI format came out and started being used and then matured over several years. And now we're starting to see that with MSIX, right? So MSIX is the new iteration from Microsoft, and when we use MSIX, we're able to virtualize the applications in a different way, and that allows us to use a technology in AVD called AppAttach. And what I think is exciting about that is if you think about being able to attach applications as the user logs on, so they're not installed on the operating system. That's one of the things George will explain to you. They're not installed on the operating system. They actually attach like your profiles in FS Logic profiles are attaching. So then we've got those 3 components of our environment: the operating system, the user's profile, and the applications that the user's using, all separate and managed separately, and then brought together at the right time. And I think that's sort of the utopia of where VDI wants to be, right? And if we can achieve that, that makes the management for us at the back end as IT professionals so much easier and so much flexible. Having said all that, and how wonderful all that is, it is important to understand what these limitations are as the MSIX format matures and what we can and can't achieve. Right? So we'll touch on some of that stuff today. Have I missed anything, George? Is that a good introduction to what we're covering? Good. Yeah, and then we'll have some discussions maybe at the end about what use cases we've seen for MSIX and AppAttach.
Yeah, sweet.
Cool. Thanks very much, mate. Over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Just give me a sec. Cool. Awesome. All right. So, yeah, as Paul explained, so today's session's around MSIX and AppAttach. They're similar but different. I'll go through the 2 different concepts and how to best use them in this preso. So what is MSIX? MSIX is basically a new universal package format designed for Windows 10 applications, and it supports desktop, mobile, and other Windows 10 devices. It allows us to package applications, both new and old, and deliver these to users from a central location. So it's pretty much similar to like AppAV packaging or VMware, ThinApp, or app volumes, and like Citrix app layering. MSIX is reliable, so there's an install rate of about 99% with a guaranteed uninstall switch. It can help with network bandwidth optimization by attaching only once per host and have everybody on that host sort of use it as an installed application. It can also save on disk space because there's no duplication of files across applications. The files are basically independent of each other, so that any updates that you do to an application will not impact any other apps that share sort of the underlying OS. You can package existing Windows applications, so old and new, includes store apps as well. You can apply runtime hotfixes to package updates, and then you can use MSIX pretty much anywhere as long as there is a valid certificate. All MSIX packages need to be signed by a valid certificate. Some benefits of app containers is the apps that are packaged using MSIX run in a lightweight app container. So again, it's sort of detached from the operating system. It's read-only, so it can still read the underlying OS, but any changes inside the application are not written back to the app. Any sort of user preferences, themes, things like that are written back to the user's profile. So that's how the settings sort of flow across each time you log in. The applications run inside the container and they are isolated using file system and registry virtualization. So again, similar to the way, you know, AppV and things like that do it. All the MSIX apps can read the global registry, and the apps write into their own virtual registry and application data folder. So again, anything that is sort of written to the profile or any customizations goes back to the user profile. Anything that's changed to the application itself is sort of reset when the application is detached. So next time a user logs back in, they launch the application, it comes back exactly how it was packaged by the IT admin. MSIX is also currently supported on the following Windows versions. So Windows 10, 1709 and later, Windows Server 2019, long-term servicing channel and later, and Windows 10 Enterprise and later. So not supported on anything below those versions there. So how do we package something into MSIX? So the simplest and easiest way is to just go ahead and install the MSIX packaging tool from the Windows Store. They provide this free. There are a whole bunch of other applications that you can download and use to create MSIX packages. But typically for this example, I'll just be showing you guys the free tool from Microsoft. When you launch it, that's basically what it looks like. Very similar sort of next GUI sort of style approach. It allows you to create applications, modify existing packages, so add hotfixes and things like that. And then you can also edit an existing package if you find that there's some sort of entry point that's not working, or you want to remove some things, you can edit existing packages as well. This screenshot here, I've basically converted the MSIX package into a virtual hard disk, and I've mounted it to the VM so that we can see the contents of the file. So this example here, obviously Notepad++, there's all the data inside that MSIX package itself. So the assets folder there contains, you know, as the name implies, it contains all the apps, graphics and icons and things like that. The VFS folder contains the app's binaries, so any DLLs, exes, config files, that kind of stuff. The registry.dat file there stores any registry settings for local machine. There are some apps that do some per user registry entries as well. And they're obviously in the user.dat and user.classes.dat files. And then finally, the resources.pri file is where the app resources are contained. So things like localized strings and paths for any additional resource files that need to tie into this application are in there as well. You'll see this image sort of a lot when you look at MSIX on the internet. If you were to go and Google it, this is sort of how the package looks. And again, just sort of further into it, the app payload, again, contains all the app code source files, assets, and things like that, DLLs, exes. The app manifest.xml file is basically a document that contains the information that the system needs to deploy, display, and update an MSIX package. This package includes package identity, dependencies, capabilities, visual elements, and extensibility points. The app block map, again, another XML. It contains a list of the app's files along with indexes, cryptographic hashes, each block of data that is stored in the package. It's verified and secured with a digital signature when the package is signed. So again, you need to sign all MSIX packages. And the block file allows MSIX packages to be downloaded and validated incrementally. It also works with differential updates to the app files after they've been installed. The app signature, pretty straightforward. It's generated when you sign the package, and it contains all the signature files for that package there. So that was MSIX itself. So it's basically, in summarization, it's app containerization or app virtualization that you attach to your VMs. Now, how does MSIX AppAttach differ from that? Well, AppAttach is basically different from the regular MSIX because it's made specifically for Azure Virtual Desktop. It allows you to dynamically attach MSIX packages to the VM. So you basically get the files from MSIX packages and extract them into a virtual hard disk or sort of inflate them into a virtual hard disk. And then from there, the virtual hard disk is then attached to the AVD session host. So you get one per session host, but multiple users can access it. So it's sort of perfect for that Windows 10 multi-session environment. In AVD deployment, MSIX can create, separation between the user data, the operating system, and the applications there. So on the left-hand side there, you can see we're sort of decoupling everything from the operating system. So moving forward, traditionally in an AVD environment, you have FS logics that controls your user profiles. They are detached from the operating system. So, on the monthly, we can destroy and recreate that VM and not have to worry about that user profiles. Well, now with the introduction of AppAttach, we can do the same thing with the applications. So, in the past, we've had to build sort of fat images. What we can do now is build a thin image and dynamically attach these apps as well as that user profile to the VM so that we have no sort of reliance on the underlying OS. We can just chop and change that as needed or deploy like a new Azure Marketplace VM each month and then have the applications and user profiles attached to those VMs. Again, when those apps are attached to the VM, they're read-only. So any changes that are made to, the preferences are stored in the user profile. And because they are read-only, when using AppAttach in Azure, the computer account actually needs read access to the storage account where the files are located to mount it. So in the case of a typical on-prem environment, you would need to hybrid Azure AD join those machines so they appear in Azure, and then you can put them in like a AD group or something like that and grant them access to that storage account where the VHDX images are. When you upgrade to a new version of Windows 10, you basically don't need to repackage everything, right? So again, because we're decoupling the apps from the operating system, you can simply attach the new packages to the new OS. So if you're going from 20H1 to 21H2, or whatever the case is, you can just have the Azure Virtual Desktop component or sort of the service itself automatically attach those applications to that new OS. And then if required, repackage any application that caused problems. So once you do that, you'd log into the VM, launch all of your applications, make sure they run and function correctly. Anything that's not working as expected, you can go back using that MSI AppAttach tool and sort of recreate those packages or edit them or do whatever needs to happen. Typically, when you do any packaging, you want to package with the sort of the lowest version of Windows that you're running. So in my example, and I'll show you guys later in the demo, I think I'm running 21H2 for my Windows 10 multi-session deployment. So I've also got a Windows 10 VM that's running 21H2 with the app packaging software on there, just to make sure that, anytime I deploy an application, it's going to work in that version of Windows in case it has to rely on any underlying sort of files in the operating system. And then finally, with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can deploy sort of AppAttach or MSIX packages using, like you can install them in the master image if you wanted to sort of containerize them that way. You can use SCCM or Intune to deploy them, or you can use the native function of AppAttach in the Azure portal to dynamically attach them to the VMs as users log in. Just a quick little workflow of how it actually works. So over on the left-hand side, we've got the user. The user then logs into the remote desktop client. From there, as you log into the host pool, now depending on what you've got set up, over on the right, you've got your user profiles that are stored on an Azure file share, and you've also got your MSIX packages that are stored on a file share. The user profile will mount using FS logics, and the apps will mount using sort of native OS and a bit of magic in the background with Azure Virtual Desktop Service to attach the applications to the OS itself. And then from there, you can publish them to a workspace, or you can publish them inside the VM. So when the user logs in, they're going to see their profile attached locally. If you open up like Disk Manager, you would see a virtual hard disk there created for the user profile, and then you'd see multiple virtual hard disks created for each of the applications that you're publishing. And because it's only attached once to the VM, any other users that log in don't need to wait for anything. It's sort of already mounted to the VM for them, so they can just go ahead and launch applications as needed. Some common questions around AppAttach. So typically in the past, when we've done it like really early on, when it was sort of in public preview, there was a lot of incompatibility issues with AppAttach, but just to confirm where you can't use it. So the operating systems that are supported by MSIX AppAttach are Windows 10 Enterprise and Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session, version 2004 or later. Doesn't work with any of the other versions prior to that. In regards to application auto updates, so when you do your packaging process, because it's like a sequence that records sort of what you're doing, best practice is to disable any application auto updates when you package the app, or any license information or anything like that that you need to capture. You do it at the time of packaging, and then you sort of save or export the package once that's been done. How many users can access an MSIX image? Well, again, MSIX AppAttach mounts MSIX images on a per machine basis, not per user basis. So in AVD, for every one virtual machine that you have, you'll only get one MSIX AppAttach image mounted per machine. And finally, can I use AppAttach outside of AVD? Well, AppAttach technically yes, but you need to create your own mount script. So there's no sort of service in the background that'll go and dynamically mount that for you. There's PowerShell scripts that you can run that can do it, but it's sort of not native in a way. You need to do some other funky stuff to get that working. Whereas MSIX, yes, fully supported. You can run it outside of an AVD environment, no problem.
Hey,
Does anyone have any? Yeah.
I'm going to say I had a question for you.
Yeah.
And then see if anybody else has got one. But the MSIX images, so they attach per machine, but obviously they're not visible to all the users. Yeah, they're only usable by the appropriate users that we've assigned them to.
Sorry, say that again, mate. You cut out a little bit on my side.
Oh, sorry. So the MSIX images, you say they're assigned per machine. But if I've got users on that multi-session machine, that some should have the application and some shouldn't. So
yeah. It really depends on how you're publishing it, right? So when you attach an AppAttach package to a host pool, it makes it available to all users that log into a desktop, right? If you wanted to hide that from specific users, then you'd need to go to the option of doing remote applications and then publishing that version of that AppAttach as a remote app to your users. That way they don't have access to the backend system. I'm not sure if anything's coming soon around sort of app masking. Like definitely FS Logic's application masking can't hide it at this point because it technically doesn't see it because it's sort of
not installed. Yeah, it's
not installed locally. But yeah, if you wanted to do something like, let's just say you have an application that's assigned, like it's licensed to a specific user, and you don't want to install that on your gold image, you can AppAttach it. You can deploy it in AVD, but you need to push it as a remote app so that only that user can see it, rather than deploying it, or giving them access to the desktop because they'd be able to see it when they log into the desktop.
So there was some talk of being able to put MSIX AppAttach as users logged on. You could attach the right applications for that user, but that functionality not here yet.
Not here yet, no. So I've been testing as much as I can to try and sort of split that off and see if we can hide it from users when they log into a desktop anyway. But at the moment, no, you can't do that.
Okay, cool. Was there any more questions, guys?
Let's get into the demos.
Cool.
Okay. So I'm just going to RDP into presentation. Cancel that. So I'm just logging into a Windows 10 21H2 single session VM, right? Nothing special about this VM. It's literally straight from the Azure Marketplace. I use it as sort of my AppAttach sequencer where I go ahead and install applications from. So here's a whole bunch of apps that I've already done prior to this, and I'll demo this to you shortly. But what I want to go through here is show you the process of creating firstly an MSIX package and then converting that package into a VHD that you can then use and publish to Azure Virtual Desktop. So again, nothing special about this VM. The only thing I've installed is the MSIX packaging tool. So I'm going to go ahead and create an application package. gives you a couple of options. So you can create it on this computer or a remote computer on a local virtual machine. I'm just going to go ahead this computer. Best practice is create a snapshot of your VM, so that way once you install applications you can sort of revert to them, because when you do go through this process it actually goes ahead and installs whatever app you're packaging on the VM itself. So just have something you can revert back to. In terms of this, so there's a packaging driver that gets installed. Windows updates gets disabled when you run this because it sort of records the process of what you're doing here. And then I give you some recommended actions here to turn off, like Windows search and whatnot. So just go ahead and tick all the stuff and hit next to sort it out for you. Over here, so this is the thing that we want to package. So it can be anything, right? Script, exe, MSI, whatever the case is. I've gone ahead and downloaded a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and just do Visual Code and package that up, right? Select the exe or the MSI, whatever the case is. If you want, if you had any optional install switches or silent installs, whatever, you can run them here. Here is where we sign the package itself, so you have to sign it, otherwise it won't really work, right? So you've got a couple of different options there. I'm just going to sign it with a self-signed certificate. So I've got one here that I created earlier. Put the password in for that. You can timestamp it as well if you wanted to, just in case of expiries and things like that, so that it still works. But just for this case, I'm just going to hit next. So if you're importing a MSI file, some of this stuff will already be populated for you. In my case, it's an exe, so I'm just going to go ahead and just go Visual Code, package name, VS Code. Sorry, that can't contain spaces. Publisher name, Microsoft or whatever. And then typically what you do is you put your version number to match your executable. Again, I'm just going to put whatever for this example. And if you wanted to change the installation location, you can. Hit next. It's going to go ahead and actually launch that package and then get you started to start installing it. So in a minute, it'll pop up. And error straight away. Let's try anyway. So this is going to install it for the user. Oh, I've gone ahead and downloaded the wrong package. Let me go back. Let me cancel. Do another one because that's definitely not going to work. I'll do key pass instead. So when you do get your packages, don't get the sort of offline media installers, get the full-blown packages that you can actually install. Otherwise, it's going to go ahead and download stuff from the internet, etc., and it's going to be in your mount points. It's going to get a bit messy. So that there, put the password in. So we're doing key pass. Etc. Next. Oh, here we go. So you just go through the install process as per normal. Next, any license information, anything that you want basically to be captured. You would just go through this process and run it as per normal. And then once this is done, we sort of get into some of the first use tasks. So that's done. If you need to run any other installers or executables, you will do them now. If there's a machine restart that's required, you will do that now and then continue doing your installation. But in this case, we're done. So we hit next, captures all the entry points. And then this is where we manage those sort of first use launch tasks, right? Hit key pass, any sort of license agreements, things like that. You can go in and sort of customize all of that here if needed. Run it a couple of times, make sure it's all good. If we had any other applications, generally for MSIX packages, or actually I should say AppAttach packages, a good example is MYOB. So in the past, I've packaged MYOB and it come with the main sort of MYOB app, and then it come with 2 or 3 other entry points for like some sort of, you know, other service that MYOB typically, you know, publishes. When you mount those packages in AVD as a virtual hard disk, sometimes it doesn't play nice because there are too many entry points. So if you if you have like Nerdio installed in your environment, for example, and you publish a application to Nerdio, Nerdio by default grabs the first entry point. So in this example, if I had KeyPass and then like an uninstall string for KeyPass as well, and that was the first entry point, well, then when users go to run it through Nerdio, because it's picking the first entry point, it's going to be the wrong sort of executable that it's launching. So just be mindful with that and sort of only package or publish any entry points that are relevant to your application. So if you're not using any of the other sort of entry points that might contain like something to look at the backend database or something like that, delete them, just hit the remove button. Or if you're missing any, you can go ahead and browse and get more entry points as needed. So there you go. Here's an example of some of the other ones that this thing automatically ignored for me because it doesn't make sense to publish, like uninstall string or something like that. So just be mindful of that and make sure that you publish only what you're looking for. So we're good. Hit next. Are you done? Yes, move on. It's then going to capture my package. It can do services and things like that as well and capture that kind of stuff if you have anything like licensing servers or like Aladdin services, things like that. If you are doing any of those packages that contain services, you just need to be aware that when you are publishing the application, you need to be an administrator to mount it. The AVD service will not mount it for you if you're not an admin on the box because it contains Windows services. So if your packages do contain services, just be aware you need to be an admin. The other thing as well is you can't do drivers. Drivers, obviously, they've always been an issue in the past. So you can't do any drivers with MSIX stuff. Hit next, save the location where you want the output file to come. There it is there. It's just created a MSIX package. Close the installer and we're done. So that's it there. Now, if I wanted to, when you double click it, we can go ahead and install it. Well, it's technically already installed because I did it on my sequencer. But if I wanted to, I can copy this file, put it in SCCM if I wanted, put it wherever to go and distribute this. And as long as this package is available to my clients with the certificate that I signed it with and it's trusted and validated, it's going to install on the local machine. I'm going to cancel that for the moment and put that aside. I've got a script here that goes ahead and does all of the sort of manual tasks for me that you traditionally need to do when creating a virtual hard disk, getting the volume GUID ID and things like that. Microsoft offer this MSIX manager tool, right? So if you just Google MSIX MGR, takes you to a Microsoft website. They've pretty much got a like a PowerShell module that goes ahead and does it. So ignore the first part. That's just me creating a certificate. I'm going to go ahead and grab the name of my MSIX package. So here I'm saying this is the MSIX path. This is what I want to spit it out to. So I'm going to give it the same name, but I'm going to spit it out as a VHDX file. The root directory is going to be called KeyPass or whatever. So this is inside the expanded virtual hard disk. I'm going to give it 100 meg for the VHD size, whatever, and then go ahead and run this command that's going to call that MSI MGR exe and do sort of all of the manual tasks for me. So I'll go ahead and run that. So here we can see it's created a virtual hard disk, it stops some services, creates partitions to disks, formats it, and then it unpacks the actual package to my new virtual hard disk here. So if I double click or mount this virtual hard disk, we can see the inflated MSIX files in here. So if we go in here, we've got all of our files related to the app, app data, the actual install directory, just as if it was installed locally. So I'm just going to go ahead and unmount that. It's the E drive there. Cool. So we're done. What I'm going to do is just copy these two now to my AppAttach share. So this share is a Azure file share. It's domain joined. My computers or my AVD hosts are hybrid Azure AD joined. They've got access or read access to this file share here. You don't necessarily need the MSIX file, but I'll show you something just before I actually launch it. So they're sitting on that file share. Let's go over to the actual VM itself. So I'll just get out of that. Here's my Win 10 virtual machine that I've deployed in AVD. In there. If I go to control panel, this is straight from the Azure Marketplace. Again, it's running 21H2. There's literally nothing on it. This is exactly how the machine came straight from the Marketplace. So no apps installed. Well, technically, there are, because I've already published some AppAttach packages, but I just want to show you two things real quick. So the first one is I'm going to grab the MSIX package and show you how to install it manually. So we go to the path where I've just copied that file to, and I just did keypass, so copy that down locally. Again, there's the certificate for the VMs. I've already got it installed. It's just a self-signed cert. When I run this keypass, actually I'll just show you in the start menu, keypass doesn't exist. It's nowhere to be found. I can go in here and say install keypass, go ahead and install it, and then go, there it is right there, keypass. So I can launch it, and it should launch exactly how I packaged it. And it's not a demo until things don't work. By the way, when you install MSIX packages, they get installed in the new apps and features that don't actually show up in control panel. So if I scroll through the list here, we can see KeyPass sitting here. I can uninstall it. And I mentioned earlier, there's a guaranteed uninstall. So this is what that means. So we're pretty much presenting this container or expanding it on the local machine. And then when we hit the uninstall button, it's going to remove that container completely, and we're not going to have access to it no more. Not sure why that didn't launch. Let me just bounce this. Shouldn't have to bounce it. Just get rid of it. Check again. Interesting. Not sure why that didn't work. It should have launched because that's the simplest form of packaging. Let me see if I can mount it. So over in Azure Virtual Desktop Native, I've got my host pool. When you click on the host pool, you'll see this MSIX packages path here. So here are some of the other applications that I've mounted. So I've got FileZilla, Notepad, etc. That's what's going to sort of make up or build my SOE in a way that I've detached the applications from the VM itself. So I'm going to go ahead and add Notepad++. Actually, before I do that, let me just remove it from here, just in case it causes any drama. Cool. So back over here, I'm going to say add, and it's going to ask for the MSIX path. So this is typically the path that we had earlier, which is this one here, and I'm going to say key pass VHDX, copy that, oops, paste that over here, hit the add button. What this is doing right now is the service itself is telling the virtual machine, hey, go ahead and sort of open this file and see if you can read it. That's why they need that read access. Here is my single entry point that I've sort of, sorry, not single entry point. Here is my package name that's inside that folder that I created, and I'm going to give it a display name of KeyPass. Registration type is on-demand or log-on blocking. This basically means have it available, but don't attach it to the VM until somebody clicks on it. Or I can say log-on blocking, which basically means wait until this is attached to the VM before allowing the user to go ahead and log in. I typically do on-demand, but if you know it's an app that's used quite regularly, just go ahead and say log-on blocking. That way it's there and available for first use, so nobody sort of has to mount it. Mounting it is literally like half a second. Like you click it and you see the bar go zoop, and it's sort of done. And your state is active or inactive. So I'm going to set it to active and attach it. That's step one. Step 2 is going into the application group associated with the app. So I mentioned earlier before, you can publish it as a desktop or you can publish as a remote app. So what I'm going to do first is publish it to all of my users that are inside the AVD users group and present KeyPass to them as a sort of like a desktop app. So here we can say we're publishing the desktop to that group, but we're also publishing all of these other applications to the user's desktop. So I'll hit add, go in the list, find KeyPass, give it a name called KeyPass. And if you had any sort of other entry points or anything like that, you'd need to select them in this drop down here. Try and stay away from multiple entry points. Just have the single one for the app that you actually want users to launch. I'll hit save. We'll see it pop up here. Once that's done, you need to reboot the host. So I'm going to go and just quickly reboot this VM. Okay, so we've just gone ahead and added KeyPass to the desktop application group. What I'm going to do now is send it as a remote application as well. So this particular app group is a remote app. Under the assignments, it's published to all AVD users. If I go to applications, we can see I'm already pushing Winamp as a remote app. I'm going to go ahead and add, oh, it's got to come back online for it to detect it, but I'm going to go ahead and publish KeyPass as well. So like Paul mentioned before, we can sort of hide apps based on users. It's not officially supported with FS Logic's app masking at the moment, but what we can do to get around that is if we're not publishing a desktop to our users, we can publish only those sort of licensed applications to our users as a remote app. So if I go into the virtual desktop client here, the web version, I've got access to the Win10 desktop. And inside that Win10 desktop are all of my MSIX AppAttach packages. But I can also, if I didn't have access to the desktop, I can publish just Winamp as a remote app, but in the background, it's an AppAttach package. So if this was some sort of licensed application tied to me and me only, well, then I can say over here in this, remote application group, there's that Winamp app that we just saw here. I can say, okay, no worries, I've got another application that's tied to only that user. I can then go ahead and just add it here and present it as a remote application to that user so that no one else on that box has got access to it and hide it that way if I wanted to. So let's see if this VM has come back online. Now I don't have strong hopes of this working because it wouldn't attach even though it's an MSIX package, but let's just try it. Remote application group, applications, add, and I'm going to say I want a MSIX package. Sorry, there's the additional entry points there. So see, for example, when I clicked on FileZilla, it defaulted to the uninstall package. If you forget to remove that, it'll be an option when publishing apps. So you want to make sure that you're publishing the correct sort of entry point in your application. I'll go over to KeyPass here, select KeyPass. There's only one entry point because I removed all the other ones. There was nothing there. So I'm going to call this KeyPass. I'm going to hit the save button. Now, what I've just done is I've sent these two apps as remote applications to that single WVD or AVD users group. If I go back to my remote desktop client and I refresh this, we should see KeyPass pop up here. There it is there. So that's how I can hide apps that are registered only to specific users and have them launched that way. So let's go into the desktop now. And connect. So I've just logged in. We'll delete that, that's no longer required. If I hit the start menu and we look for KeyPass, there it is there. If I go to control panel, obviously KeyPass was a traditional application. It should show nothing in control panel here because it's not actually installed on the box, but it's installed as a AppAttach package. So if we go back down again and launch KeyPass, this probably won't work. Teams auto start. No, okay, so that's not going to work for whatever reason. I need to go back and sort that out. But some of the other applications that I've done, and just to show you that they are not actually installed locally, if I go to the apps here, we've got a whole bunch of different apps I could pick from. So FileZilla, Notepad++, Putty, VLC, Winamp, Zoom. So I'll go ahead and launch those apps. So first one, Zoom. So that little bar that just went past really quickly shows that it was mounted. So there's a Zoom. What else have we got? FileZilla. See how quick that bar sort of mounted it. So if you want, you can turn on logon blocking to make sure that the apps are automatically launched prior. What else have we got? Notepad++. You know, these are all running in AppAttach packages, containerized in their own thing. So anything that I come in here, if I go into preferences and, you know, I turn on like dark mode or something like that, these settings will write back to my user profile. So the next time that I launch this application, it's going to remember my preferences. But any sort of stuff that are application related, like, you know, automatic updating and things like that, that needs to be turned off during the packaging process. And just to prove that these are AppAttach packages, if I go into, where is it? Disk management. And now I'm not using FSLogix for my profile here, so you won't see that, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 AppAttach packages that have been mounted to this system. If I go back over to Azure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then that's the typical desktop, so that makes 8. So yeah, that is AppAttach in a demo. Does anyone have any questions around any of that I've just gone through?
Maybe it's worth talking a little bit, George, about some of the sort of inherent value in doing that approach. It's I know we've had quite a few of these technologies come along, and in managing applications in any desktop environment, but particularly in VDI, it can get tricky, and this just simplifies it a heck of a lot, right? So if we think about what it means is there's only one package of the application that's ever used, right? So we're not distributing it to, like we do with Intune or SCCM. When we distribute the applications, that package has to be distributed around, has to be installed on many machines, right? This case, and particularly when we're using it with AVD, where we're only ever using one package, one instance of that package, right? And then just attaching it multiple times. So that means that the backend packaging effort and the admin of the application and updates to it, all that is very, very simple, right? So if we need to update an application, we go to one place, we update it once, and that's done for everybody in the environment. We don't no longer need to distribute that out to all those different desktops. Right?
Yeah, 100%. It also simplifies a lot of the stuff around gold images, right? I mean, in a real world scenario, what you'd do is you'd have your gold image, you'd have your sort of core applications installed. So some of those apps like, you know, Office, Teams, that kind of stuff. You can even do Teams in the AppAttach environment if you really wanted to, but I find sort of any sort of heavy applications like that probably better to be installed locally. But what you can do is have this vanilla image. Like I said before, there's nothing installed on this image, like it was straight from the Azure Marketplace. So let's just say in 6 months' time, a new version of Windows 10 rolls around. What I can do is come straight over into my host pool, right, where my VMs are. If we have a look here, I've got one session host that's there currently running 21H2. I can then add the new session host, to put this one in maintenance mode or sorry, enable drain mode and force users over to that new session host. And because these applications are already attached, all I'm doing is just getting the latest Windows 10 image, putting it in my host pool, and then building my SOE based on these applications that are dynamically attached to the session. So there's no more, you know, have to rebuild or migrate or you know, muck around with registry, etc. for each and every application and updating each and every time. If in future, you know, there's a new version of Putty that comes out, I will just go ahead and repackage it again and publish it out. Done. If there's a hot fix for Putty that needs to be applied, well, then that, you know, you pretty much go back to the process of your original sort of packaging VM, going back to your MSIX packaging tool, you know, modify a package, go ahead and you know, change whatever needs to be changed in there, or add additional hot fixes, that kind of stuff, and again, just publish it out again. Everything's sort of stored centrally. As long as the VMs can access it, they are sort of attached or sort of copied down as a container to the VM. And any changes to that app that people might change or break or something like that, it's because it's read only. It's actually not going to write back to the like image itself. It's going to break the user profile, if anything, and not anybody else's machine. So that's sort of some of the benefits that you've got around that.
Now, you mentioned installing the software directly onto the OS, and I think we're still definitely in a sort of hybrid mode. It'd be great if every application could be delivered like this, but that's just not the case yet. MSIX. Talking in the industry, it seems to get about 40-50% of the applications are compatible with MSIX. And then the ones that might create services, for example, or have some deep integration with the operating system, can be a little bit problematic. So they don't work. So the success rate is only that 56%. So I think we are still in a period where we will blend those strategies, and you could build a gold image, maybe put your Office and your Teams and your heavy hitters on there. But then what's possible for these line of business applications, if they're compatible with MSIX, it's a really good story to be able to manage them at scale, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've got about 10 minutes. Let's see if I can get VS Code machine installer to see if I can package this down or package it up just to show a live working. There it is. I must have clicked the user installer. Let me give this another crack because I really want to show you how simple it is. I'm not sure why key pass didn't work.
Any questions from anybody else while George is doing that? Any sort of thoughts on how you would make use of that in your environment, or questions about the strategy for using that hybrid of gold image and MSIX? Does it all make sense? Going to take silence as a job well done, right? And you understand it all.
There's very little people out there that are actually going 100% AppAttach for images and things like that. So even though you're not using it these days, don't feel like you're missing out. It is still fairly new, like Paul mentioned. Like, not all applications work. There are some hiccups, obviously, with that key passing. I have packaged that before. I just don't know why that didn't work now. But yeah, there are very little people that actually use it to date. Dan, I see you got your hand up.
Yeah, g'day everyone. How does it go with larger packages or larger installs that have maybe multiple installs? As an example, we've had a request come through for SQL Studio Manager to be available in our environment. I've used FS Logics to hide that, but I'm wondering if this might be a better path to go down.
Yeah. So if you're giving everyone access to the desktop and you want to hide an MSIX AppAttach package, you can't. You'd have to publish as a remote app for now, right? But if you wanted to package that up for everyone, for example, and it's a large package, multiple installs, so you can do that no problem. So with this example here, like that I'm sharing right now, I just did VS Code, right? So I've finished that install. If I had other installs, I'd go ahead and manually kick them off now and continue. If an install required a reboot, I'd hit the reboot button, the machine will reboot, it'd come back to this state and it'd remember where I was up to, and I'd keep installing those additional packages or plugins or whatever the case. So yes, it can handle large packages.
Just like doing a capture in an MSIX, then it's very similar approach. So you can add multiple bits in there, right? And then it's capturing the deltas, the difference between when you started on the machine and when you click finish, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, and just wait this to do its thing. Oh, a spinning icon. Cool. Close it. We're good. I'll just run it one more time just to make sure we're sweet. Cool. Next. Yes, move on. One thing as well when you create your virtual hard disk files, it asks for a VHD size, right? So you should always size it based on your actual install package. So go to program file, see how big the actual size of the application is. Just for this, I'm sort of best guessing it. So I reckon I'll give 300 meg should be fine for, what is this, VS Code? I'm hoping. I'll check it in a sec. It's creating the package. Probably fast forward it. It's 400 measure. Not 500. So give it that. Copy the name of the package. So that's what we're importing. This is what we're spitting out. And I'll just run this to create it. If you are looking at doing anything like this, make sure you go and get the MSIX tool from Microsoft, because it's just a pain trying to create volume GUIDs and attaching virtual hard disks manually and all that kind of stuff. So much easier with this. All right, we're done. So there's my VS Code that's been spat out. It's VHDX. I'll copy this to file share. Still going to have to reboot the host, because anytime you attach a package, you have to reboot the server. In the case of VMs being built, I mean, unless you delete and recreate your VMs sort of on the daily, you would never really have to reboot these hosts. Where is that? So host pool, MSIX packages, add, put the path that I just did, VS Code, active, add, application groups. You know what? I'll push this one as a remote app. VS Code. Save. Cool. Actually, let me just see if it does actually let us mount it. Pretty sure it needs a reboot, but let's give it a crack. It's a reboot, pretty sure. Where am I going? Virtual machines, that one, restart. Yeah, Dan, the other thing as well with, I guess, AppAttach and FSLogic's application masking, you can probably get around by using like custom rules to look at registry and actual like file paths. So I think these applications are in like C, Windows packaged apps or something like that. I can't remember where they actually get mounted as containers, but if you were to hide that from the user, you could probably hide the application using FSLogix. It's technically like not supported, because when you go through the wizard itself, there's no option to select a package, because again, it doesn't exist. But if you sort of have like a path entry to say, yep, don't display this to the user, you you can probably get around that limitation. I haven't actually mucked around with it myself, but something that could be of use. All right, let's see when this comes up. We should be good to go. And the other thing as well, if you are using Nerdio in your environments, Nerdio has got the ability to install certificates for you on the fly. So if you use a different certificate for a different application, you can import them straight into Nerdio, go into the Nerdio's AppAttach functionality, point it to where your VHDX files are, and then whenever you attach it to a machine, Nerdio will ensure that that certificate is there prior to mounting the application itself and launching it. All right, cool. So that's back up. Visual Studio. Should come up. There you go. So that's Visual Studio as a remote app that's been app attached to the machine. Any sort of changes that I made, like if I got rid of this get started during the packaging process or made changes there, they'd follow through. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you guys have learned something from the session.
Good stuff. We should just do a wrap up and talk about the next sessions coming up. Thanks for that slide, George. So the next session in 2 weeks' time is economic assessment, where we'll take you through what we do to help businesses understand the differences between the costs when you're running VDI on-prem. If you think about our traditional RDS farms or Citrix farms on-prem and the costs involved in setting those up and running them. Conversely, like what does it mean in AVD? Because there's a big sea change there, right? So from those capex and build once and sort of have limited capacity to very flexible capacity, but also very flexible billing as well, right? So that goes up and down as you make use of the system. So we've walk you through how we help businesses understand that. So it's great if you're trying to build a business case internally. And then after that, we've got sessions on AVD cost analysis and chargeback, which is a way that we look at what it's costing to run AVD on a per user basis, but even better than that, on a per user per session basis. So we'll look at how we can drill into the costs of each individual session. So each time they log on, what size of VM are they using, and how much does that cost to run for however many hours that they're using it. Right. So that's a fantastic way to help the business understand how much it's costing you to run AVD and keep that under control. And then there's session 8, which is the finale of the series, where we're looking at best practices. I've mentioned this a couple of times. I think there's a request to have a session on Windows 365. We might do one on security, but if you've got ideas or ones that you sort of future sessions that you'd like to see us, we're more than happy to extend this the discussion series and do more demos, more talks. With that, I think we're done. George, are you happy?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, like I said, hopefully you guys have learned something from this. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm happy to assist and see if we can get the ball rolling and discussion along some more topics in future.
Awesome. Thanks again, George. As always, good session, mate.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending.
Thanks a lot.